In today's show, NBA GMs really don't think Damian Lillard is one of the best point guards in the league. Plus, does the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes make everybody tankers this year? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen every day. Free on all platforms, 5 days a week. Your only daily Trailblazers podcast. Start your day listening to Locked On Blazers. You'll enjoy it, I promise. And then tell your friends to do the same. If you like it, they'll like it too. It'll give you something to chat about. It's your team every day here on Locked On Blazers. Fun show for you today. We're going to talk about the NBA.com's NBA GM survey and what they did to sleep on your boy Damian Lillard. We're going to talk a little bit about Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. And then we get a listener question to close the show. It's going to be a bunch of fun. Let's get into this NBA GM survey. Every year, John Schumann does an NBA GM survey where all 30 teams are sent a survey to answer some sort of basic questions, kind of about like who's the best player, at best at X position, who's the best coach, who's the best offensive coach, what player, breaks defenses the most, all those things. Kind of it's a perception survey. It's not anything else than just sort of like what is the perception at this exact moment in time, like taking sort of the league's temperature at a moment in time. I will say this. I know from my time around the NBA that not every GM fills this out. Someone in the Blazers front office will fill it out. And then Joe Cronin, if you did fill it out, email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. But like someone in each NBA and each front office fills it out. Who that is specifically is a little bit different. But I think it's a good test of kind of the perception around the league. And there's a lot in here. The Blazers didn't get any votes for one of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference, which the way it shook out, 9 other teams did get a vote for top 4 in the conference, which means like in some ways the Blazers are considered the 10th best team in the West, which I think is in general the sort of outside perception of this team. Luka Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo are considered the MVP frontrunners. Evan Mobley is considered the most likely to be a breakout player. Jeremy Grant got a vote for most underrated acquisition. Blazers got a vote for what team will improve most this season, which I think is true. Shaedon Sharpe did not show up on which rookie will be the best in 5 years. The first 5 picks in the draft all got a vote. Number 6 got a vote. Number 8 got a vote, but the 7th pick in the draft, Shaedon Sharpe did not get a vote. Yikes. That just seems kind of unlucky more than anything else. It just like Dyson Daniels got the vote and he didn't. Shaedon Sharpe got a vote for biggest steal in the draft, considered tied for 3rd with 10% along with AJ Griffin of the Atlanta Hawks. The Blazers got a vote for which team's level of I will be hardest to predict, which I really like because I am having a trouble predicting their level of success. I kind of think they'll be mediocre, but I don't have a good sense of what their ceiling or their floor is. Like I know kind of where I think they'll land, but the middle I feel like I'm okay on the middle, but I don't know the sort of how bad or how good it could be, the polls on either end. Damian Lillard got a vote for best leader. Damian Lillard got a vote for who do you want taking the last shot. But you know where Damian Lillard did not get a vote? Who is the best point guard in the NBA? Wow. Steph Curry, 72% of the votes, up from 57% the year before. He's your number 1 best point guard in the NBA. Hard to quibble with that one. Luka Doncic is number 2, 14% of the votes. Second best point guard in the league. Chris Paul, 3rd best point guard in the league with 10% of the votes. And 4, Atlanta's Trae Young, 3% of the votes. No one else got any votes. That's that. And the no one else means Damian Ollie Lillard was not considered by any team in the league, any of the 29 other teams, because I believe how it works, I'm not 100% sure about this, is that you can't pick your own guy. So the Blazers couldn't have voted for Damian Lillard. So the 29 other teams, no one considered Damian Lillard the best player in the NBA. I don't think it's ranked choice voting. So it's not like a lot of these GMs consider Dame the second or third best point guard in the NBA and he didn't get a vote. But he got 0 votes for best point guard in the league. And like, quite frankly, this is some silly Posturepedic stuff. Like, they are sleeping on Damian Lillard because while I do think it's true that Steph and Luka are better than Dame. Like, I don't think that's super controversial. Luka Doncic is a prodigy. Steph Curry's one of the best to ever do it. You might be able to quibble with whether Luka Doncic plays point guard. He certainly plays point guard on offense. Whether he plays point guard on the other end is I don't think he's ever guarded a point guard in his life. So what position Luka plays might be more of a debate than whether he's the best point guard in the league. But so I think, like, without much controversy, those two are better than Dame. Chris Paul's definitely had a better career than Damian Lillard. He's one of the greats, and he was really good in the regular season last year. So I don't have too much quibble with Paul, although I don't think that's everyone would agree with me there. In fact, some of you are yelling into your headphones right now that there is just no way that Chris Paul is better than Damian Lillard. Sure, fine. I think we've reached the point where you could have a very reasonable debate. Trae Young had a better season than Damian Lillard last year. Trae Young, his counting stats were immaculate. Trae Young is one of the best passers in the league. He also averaged 27, 28 points per game last year, pushing 30 and 10 in his 4th NBA season. He's really good. I don't think he's better than Damian Lillard. I think you could spin it that he might be up there, and I think there's certainly going to be people in Atlanta. Shout out to my man Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks, like we could debate this a little bit more heavily, a little more thoroughly. But what is the best point guard? Is it the best scorer? Is it the best floor general? Or is this some sort of combination of those things? Neither Dame or Trae are good defensive players. Dame's level of production in the league has been consistently, he just has more, consistently better. Dame missed all of last season. That's why he's not on this list. That's the actual spoken part about this. Or unspoken part about this. If Dame had played, he would have gotten a vote. He just only played 29 games and he struggled in those games. And this is this is sort of like a temperature test of right now. And again, this is ranked choice voting. This is who's the best point guard in the league. Many of these GMs might think Dame's second. But the idea that he isn't right in that range. And I think he's better than Trae Young. Maybe not for long. Trae Young is on the ascension and Dame, they're 10 years apart, right? It's just how time works. But I'm not a hot takey guy on this podcast. I have takes. I'm not going to lie. I don't have takes. That's what the show is. But I'm not a screamer and pounding the desk. I'll pound the desk for you right now. I don't do that very often. It's not my style. But I think Dame's better than Trae Young. I think the body of work is better than Trae Young. And I think comparatively they'll be better than Trae Young. But here's the thing about this. It doesn't matter because here's what happens. Damian Lillard goes out and is significantly better than Trae Young, and this is a thing to laugh at. This is a thing to poke fun at. If you're a Blazer fan, what you do with this is not get no reason to get up all in arms. Just bookmark it. It's on NBA.com. John Schumann put it out. Bookmark it. And when you want to share it with your friends or share it with your Atlanta Hawks friends or send it out on your social medias when Dame goes nuts, do it. Because Dame's going to go nuts. He's going to have a really good season. I have no doubt about it. He's looked good in preseason. If there was any concern about his shooting or his burst, I think both of those have been there. The Blazers didn't look very good in their second preseason game against the Jazz, but Dame himself looks fine. He's going to be very, very productive this year. He's going to be one of the best point guards in the NBA. Is he going to be the best point guard in the league? Certainly there's a high-end outcome where Dame is right up there with the best point guards in the league. And certainly the low-end outcome is that Dame's the 5th best point guard in the league, which is where he is right off of this list. This is some silly Posturepedic stuff. They are sleeping on your boy. But what are you going to do? This is worth. I thought this was notable of all the sort of where the Blazers didn't fall on the NBA GM survey stuff. Sure, But Dame not being one of the best point guards in the league is like, oh, I didn't know that is the outside perception, is that he's fallen that far. The fun part about this season is Damian Lillard getting to remind folks, yes, he is still a Hall of Fame point guard. He's going to be that dude, and I am straight up not worried about him. I'll bring back these sleep number heads. I'll bring back these Casper mattress fools. I will bring back these My Pillow dummies. I'll bring all of this back up when Dame, scores 61 in Atlanta later this year. Actually, the Blazers have traditionally struggled in Atlanta specifically. When Dame scores 61, when the Hawks come to Portland, I'll make sure to bring this back up that Dame is not one of the 4 best point guards in the league. All right, let's talk about the biggest NBA game that happened that was not an NBA game. That's what we'll do in the second segment. But before we get there, I want to tell you all about BetOnline. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Whatever that sports action is, you're going to find odds on it. Right now, it's football season. It's about to be basketball season, and you can certainly bet on all your NBA preseason games. But the NFL's rolling along. We got college football all Saturday long, and they got more lines, more props, more odds on all things gridiron than you're going to find anywhere else. If you don't want to do football stuff, you can find basketball, you can find NHL bets, you can find tennis and golf and MMA, all of your combat sports, whatever you're looking for, soccer here and abroad as the North American soccer leagues wrap up their seasons over the next couple weeks. It's all there on BetOnline. So go take advantage today. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I should have done that in the third segment, but we did it in the second segment, so whatever. Welcome to the middle of the show where I screwed up my intro. The biggest game in the NBA happened last night, and it was not an NBA game. It was a prospect showcase held outside of Vegas in Henderson, Nevada, in which the G League Ignite hosted the Metropolitan 92s, a French league team that features presumptive 2023 first overall pick Victor Wembanyama and presumptive number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft Scoot Henderson. And all those two did was put on a monumental game, a game that has the whole league talking, a game that, quite frankly, I was at the Blazers preseason game, and I said to a fellow media member who was there, I was like, I think we went to the wrong game. Like, I don't think we're supposed to be at Blazers Jazz here. Like, we were supposed to be somewhere else. Here's how big this game was. David Locke, founder of this podcast, host of Locked On Jazz, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, led his podcast off today on Locked On Jazz talking about Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. That's how good they were. If you don't know who Wemby is, Victor Wembanyama is a 7'4" prodigy. He's he has handles to take between the legs, step back threes. He can pass. He can block shots. In the game last night, he scored 37 points, blocked 5 shots, and hit 7 3-pointers. Scoot Henderson had 28 and 9. These are two can't-miss prospects who were put in a showcase game who played like can't-miss prospects. I've seen some people compare it to, and I was not alive then, so I can't really speak to it, but the 1979 NCAA championship game between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, where it was like, these two are the next two dudes. We know what's coming. And there was a buzz about the future of the league because of folks outside of the league playing. You could argue that the 79 NCAA title game was like the beginning of the new era of the NBA. It was going to be ushered in by Magic and Larry Bird, and that was their coming out party to say, hey, the 80s, we're going to save this league that's in trouble. They come in, they rejuvenate the league. Jordan comes in after that, and modern basketball is born. I don't know if Victor Wembanyama at 7'4" is going to like change the way the league goes, but I think everything we know about the direction that like the style of basketball that's heading and like the way sort of like youth development is working is that there's going to be more dudes who are bigger with freaky deaky Kevin Durant skill sets, like a Manute Bol on steroids. Wembanyama is, if you haven't seen the highlights, go watch some. Like it's, if you're watching this on YouTube, just like click off the page. I'm sure it's in your come back actually. Actually, you know what? Don't click off the page. Watch the whole episode, and then after that, I'm sure it's in your suggested videos. And if you're a podcast listener, like just pull up some Victor Wembanyama highlights. dude's a freak. Like I'm not sure we've seen a prospect like this. Like if you were like a little bit sold on Chet Holmgren, imagine Chet Holmgren like times 200%. He has a skill set and a size and a frame that we've never seen. And Scoot Henderson is like, if Victor Wembanyama wasn't here, people would be excited about Scoot Henderson like they were excited about Allen Iverson coming out of Georgetown, like they were excited about Derrick Rose coming out of Memphis. Like this is the next great, all-star Hall of Fame MVP point guard in the league. Scoot's that good. In fact, on Locked On NBA Big Board, the NBA draft show here on this network, friend of the program, Raphael Barlow, talked about how basically NBA scouts and Raphael super plugged in compared Scoot to every good point guard of the last 15 years, and they were even more excited about Victor Wembanyama. Here's the good news. This is Thursday's show. You're listening to Thursday, October 6th show. If you're listening to this before noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern, they play today. They play on Thursday. So like it's on ESPN2. Go check it out. Like it probably can't live up to the hype, but if anything could, it's that. So you might be asking, like, Mike, other than just being excited about basketball because you're a big basketball dork, like why are you talking about this? And then the fair question, dear listener. It's because that game, and Wemby specifically, his prowess and his tantalizing skill set. Everybody I follow in the NBA draft world, including former guest on this program, Kristen Peak, said like Wemby could shut it down today and be the number one pick in the NBA draft 9 months from now. That's how good he's been. That's how excited and enamored scouts are with his game. That means this season might see some of the most aggressive and egregious tanking we have ever seen. The short answer to your question is no, the Blazers aren't going to tank. The longer answer to your question is yes, there is a scenario where injuries and things pop up and the Blazers pull the plug for a second straight season, but they are built to be a competitive playoff team this season, or like fancy themselves as such. They are not a team that's going to be at the bottom of the West. There are teams that are structured to be at the bottom of the West. San Antonio has one of the worst rosters in the league. OKC has a super young roster, and if they can figure out how to make up an injury for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they'll be one of the worst teams in the league. Houston is super duper young. They might be a little bit better than they were last year, but they have so many first and second year guys on that roster. They're going to stink. Those are three awful teams. The Jazz are kind of caught in between being a little bit too competitive with Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Michael Conley, and like really, really being bad. The Jazz have a path to being really bad, but closer than anyone else in sort of that middle of the West. The Kings, I think specifically, will try to make the playoffs. If any team should say like, hey, we'll just continue our playoff drought one more year, it absolutely should be the Sacramento Kings, but they're not going to do that. They're the Kings. This is the year the Kings make the playoffs when everyone else tanks. All of that said is like, plenty of bad teams in the East. Pacers are horrific. I think the Hornets have an outside chance to turn themselves into a pretty aggressive tanking team. Orlando's not going to be good enough to get there. They're going to be bad. We'll see what. Like the Knicks aren't going to do it, but their roster is such that Julius Randle misses a handful of games and they'll be near the bottom of the standings as well. They're also one of the truly bad teams. What do the Wizards do? Like all of these questions pop up because of how good Wemby is, and because the number 2 prize, if you do not get Victor Wembanyama, is you get Allen Iverson, right? Like you end up with someone who would be the number 1 pick in pretty much all of the other drafts, at least according to the draft people I have read so far in the aftermath of this game. What this means is there might be more bad teams that allow the Blazers to stack up some wins, and it means playing bad teams early in the year before they've truly committed to tanking. And they might commit to tanking to like December 1st. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN said that there will be a race to the bottom. He said one NBA executive told him there would be a race to the bottom like we've never seen. On this podcast, Kristen Peak months ago said that she thought teams would start pulling the plug in December and start truly aggressively tanking in December because that's how good Wemby is. The Blazers got to fatten up on bad teams. They have to fatten up on bad teams if they're going to, if you want them to be a playoff team. If you want them to tank, like, sorry, they just mistimed it a little bit. And like we can debate the like sort of all of their decisions leading up to like, why are they going for it this year with this roster? Why didn't they take another gap year and all these things? Their franchise pillar is 32 years old. He wants to be competitive and doesn't want to be on a team that wins 19 games. And like, it's hard to do both. It's hard to have Dame and have Dame happy and have Dame, on board with the plan and also the plan B to be super terrible. Because Damian Lillard is here, the Blazers are their graph's headed in the other direction. They're not going to be in the Wemby sweepstakes unless something really goes south for them, which, like, again, we can sort of debate the merit of that, timing and all of those things, but like, it's just the truth. How it impacts the Blazers more specifically is that there's going to be teams that maybe were in the middle that are going to be getting out of the middle fast. And that means that if you go on the road and you play these, the Pacers, and you play Orlando, and you play Charlotte, and you play Washington, and you go to that swing through Texas, and you hit San Antonio and Houston, you got to stack up on those wins. You got to stack up on those wins because those teams want to lose. They want to lose. So go ahead and give it to them. Giving away those games against true tanking teams this year is going to be more egregious than it's been in the past. And frankly, like, if the Blazers are struggling and they're like 10th in the West, which I think is like a totally reasonable outcome for them, like in March, I might be banging the drum for not making the playoffs and getting in the lottery. That borderline play-in or lottery spot, like if you're between 10 and 11, or you're 10 and you can get to 11, like that might be where we see the really egregious tanking. Other than the Kings are going to go for it because they're a silly franchise. The Blazers, I think, they could find themselves in a situation where they do need to make some real decisions, and then being bad and developmental, like what the Rockets are doing is tanking, but they're like, Rockets have done it over a course of a few seasons, and now their roster's just super young. They're not tanking. They're just playing a really young group, and they're going to lose naturally by what happens with a young group. The Blazers would have to tank, and by that I mean rest good veterans in order to lose. We'll revisit that in March if that becomes an option, because Wembanyama, from what I watched the highlights, some long form highlights of it, because again, I was at the Blazer game, a good reporter doing my job, trying to bring you a good podcast. But like, he's just incredible, and Scoot was incredible too. Go check out those highlights if you haven't, and make sure you listen to Locked On NBA Big Board, Locked On NBA Draft. Raphael Barlow had a great episode today. It was super fun talking about. He was in Vegas, and he's going to be in Vegas again. He actually was in Paris earlier this week, or last week, watching Wembanyama in person for 2 games. Like, very few people have seen him as much as Raphael has, so make sure you check out his show. All right, to close the program, we're actually going to go to the third segment. I'm even going to get my intro right on this one. I got a listener question about the Blazers having 5 starters in double figures. That's what we'll do to close the show. Join me there, won't you? Still a pass first point guard, still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. I got a question from Jonathan Sassy, and I'm pretty sure I get Jonathan's name wrong when they ask a question. Jonathan Sassy asks, it seems like all 5 Blazers starters could average double figures. Any idea when the last time that happened? I think the only way it happens is if Josh Hart wins the starting small forward role, because Nazir Little and Justice Winslow probably won't average double figures. Okay, I have some thoughts on this, but let's first get to the history books. The last time the Blazers had all 5 starters score in double figures was the 2013-2014 season. That was the first year that Robin Lopez joined the program. Robin Lopez, LaMarcus Aldridge. It was just a really good team. Nicholas Batum, Wesley Matthews, and second-year Damian Lillard. That was the 0.9 second shot to beat Houston, and they ended up playing the eventual NBA champion San Antonio Spurs in the second round of the playoffs. That was the last time that they had all 5 starters. We got 82 games from Dame, 82 games from Wesley Matthews, 82 games from Nicholas Batum, 82 games from Robin Lopez, and 69 games from LaMarcus Aldridge. Basically, Everybody played every game except LaMarcus missed 13. And all of those dudes, LaMarcus, 23 points, Dame, 20 points, Wesley Matthews, 16, Nicholas Batum, 13, and Robin Lopez, 11, average double figures. Since then, the Blazers have had 5 players average double figures on multiple occasions. And they've even had 5 players who have been starters at different points in the season. See Enes Kanter and Yusuf Nurkic in 2019 average in double figures. But if you're talking start to finish, grain to bread, averaging in double figures, the last time it happened was the 2013-2014 season, closing in on a decade ago, 9 seasons ago, excuse me. But so that's the math, like that's the history books. But I think what I want to talk about is a little bit like what this means for the Blazers. I do think you're going to get 4 folks in double figures no matter what. Dame and Anthony Simons are going to score. I'm not worried about them scoring. I'm really not worried about Anthony Simons yet. If you are, dial it back. He's going to make some 3-pointers. He's going to be fine. He's just missed some shots he can make. I'm truly not worried about Ant's preseason production. Jeremy Grant's going to average double figures. He's just really darn good. Yusuf Nurkic is going to average in double figures because he gets enough offensive rebounds. He gets enough touches. He's pick and roll partner. He's book Nurk for 14 a game, 13 and some change at a minimum, 17 maybe, like the best version of Nurk. But although I think that's relatively unlikely. But who starts at the small forward is going to determine this. I don't think any of the gentlemen who are going to start at small forward are going to average in double figures as starters. And let me be clear about why I think that. Last night I watched Josh Hart play a game in which he attempted numerical one shot in the half court. Josh Hart is a beast in transition. One of the best transition players in the league. Someone I really love grabbing and going off the offensive glass. He is great at it. But he was a little hesitant in the half court. Justice Winslow is just probably not going to get enough shots up to average double figures, and Nazir Little looks a little out of it to begin this season. I'm not worried about necessarily yet. I'm not panicking on Naz by any means, but even then, I don't think any of those guys, if they're in the starting group, are going to get enough offensive touches to score double figures. It has to be, you need like those 2 elite scorers like the LaMarcus and Dame, and then your sort of garbage guys of Batum and Robin Lopez to be right on the cusp. And Lopez had enough putback buckets and enough opportunity that he scored in double figures. The Blazers have, because of this sort of relative equalness of their talent in terms of Hart, Winslow, and Little, there's just none of them are going to get enough playing time that they're going to soak up guaranteed double figure scoring. I think that's one of my concerns and one of the reasons I do not think it will happen. But I think it speaks more to the Blazers I think the Blazers have like a good top 7. I think their top 7 is good. I'm really worried about their depth after 7, but I think their top 7 has really, really useful depth. And those top 7, and throw Winslow in there for 8, throw Keon if you want in there for 9, but let's say Winslow in there for 8. Though those top 8 have guys who are going to play and eat each other's minutes, such that I don't think, Jonathan, that it's going to happen. But something certainly to keep an eye on, and something that the Blazers, who have more useful wings than they've had in a long time, something to get a little bit excited about. Okay, tomorrow's show, the Blazers are going to play a preseason game. We'll talk about that one next week. Sunday, they also play a preseason game. Next week, we'll wrap up that game. They play against the Kings on Sunday evening. We'll do some more season previews. We'll talk about what's happened in the league. The Blazers will wrap up their preseason slate. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Make the show your first listen every day. How about you make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Basketball? Nobody does it better than Josh Lloyd. Available wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Basketball. You'll find it. You'll have fun. I guarantee it'll make you a better fantasy basketball player. Tell your friends about this podcast. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.